I knew the mission parameters had changed the first week he arrived. Not the air conditioning, the operational environment. Conversations went to whisper protocol in the corridors. People learned to say innovation like they were calling in artillery coordinates they didn't trust. He was Carter Langfield Jr., the CEO's son, a man who wore his father's last name like body armor and a quarter zip like a dress uniform for trust fund kids. He called me Torres, the way some officers say enlisted, even though I'd been director of operations and risk at Langfield Industries for 16 years. Name's Mike Torres, 48 years old, been running operations and risk management here since I transitioned out of the Navy. 12 years of service taught me that preparation beats improvisation every time. Our founder, Colonel Benjamin Langfield, used to call me his operations sergeant. In the military, that's about the highest compliment a commanding officer can give. Colonel Ben built this company at a metal folding table in a rented storefront, the kind with a bell that rang every time someone opened the door. When money finally came in, he didn't buy a Porsche. He bought fireproof safes and backup systems. Processes create permanence, he'd say, sliding a document across to me with a pen and a sticky note that read Archive X3. My job was simple. Make sure the bones outlast the buzzwords. Carter was all buzzwords. He liked to schedule brain sprint stand-ups at 0600 and congratulate himself for owning morning mindshare. He wanted to sunset anything that didn't sparkle on a PowerPoint slide. The first week, he converted our operations wiki into a Slack channel called Carter's Command Notes. The second week, he hired his college roommate as head of culture velocity. By the third week, he was walking through compliance like a realtor with a ring light. Being underestimated is tactical advantage. You can hear the gears turn while everyone else performs breathing exercises. I watched him replace competence with charisma and charisma with caffeine. I watched good people move their service ribbons into boxes, and I started opening drawers that hadn't seen daylight since my first deployment here. Colonel Ben and I had written protocols for days like this. Not for external threats, for institutional amnesia. Companies forget where the engine is when the hood ornament gets shiny enough. Deep in our governance files, in plain English and 3 signatures, lived a clause people had joked about as the ghost protocol. It wasn't a joke. It had teeth. Carter didn't notice my calendar permissions tightening or how HR started sending me situation reports instead of memos. He didn't notice the notary stamp on my desk. He didn't notice that every quick change he pushed was quietly mirrored into a secure archive labeled Langfield Foundational Protocols. He didn't notice much at all except his own reflection in the boardroom glass. He noticed me at 07:58 hours. He was waiting in conference room B with an HR manager and a brand new ceramic mug that said, Monday is a mindset. He smiled the way people do when they've rehearsed in elevator mirrors. Consider yourself history, he laughed, and even his laugh had product placement in it. I nodded once. I didn't argue. Arguments are for people trying to keep doors open. I was making sure the operational protocols remembered how to execute. Roger that, sir, I said. I'll need to execute transition protocols. I walked out with my gear bag down the corridor lined with company photos. Colonel Ben in a wrinkled dress shirt. Our first server rack. The night we hit our Series B funding. My hands were steady. My mouth tasted like copper pennies. In the parking garage, I did the only unprofessional thing I'd allow myself all week. I sat in my truck for 30 seconds and let out a breath that didn't have words. Then I opened my banking app, deposited the final paycheck, and watched the timestamp settle on the screen like coordinates locking into place. Carter thought firing me would be a clean break. He'd forgotten that clean breaks are a medical term. Bones, not people. I drove 2 blocks, parked by a FedEx office, and walked into the notary's office that knows me by rank and preferred pen. The envelope was already prepped, cover letter, certification log, and 1 page printed from a scan I'd made in 2016 and rescanned every 3 years like scheduled maintenance. The notary read the first line, blinked twice, then looked up at me the way pilots look at storm warnings on radar. She didn't ask questions. She stamped, "Paper doesn't bluff. Paper doesn't break rank." The courier met me on the sidewalk, a woman with a tight bun and a messenger bag that had seen more boardrooms than most executives. I handed her the envelope, checked our delivery protocol one more time, general counsel only, signature required, no substitutes, and watched her move toward Langfield's glass facade like she was carrying live ordnance. I didn't go home. I crossed the street to the coffee shop with the sticky tables and perfect sight lines, took overwatch position by the window, and opened my field notebook. I wrote 3 lines, termination executed, funds received. Notice in flight. People imagine revenge as heat. It isn't, it's precision. Heat is for amateurs. Precision is for professionals. Through the glass, I could see Carter in the lobby. Phone in hand, grin turned up to maximum setting. He looked like a man promoting a cliff as a new hiking trail. Upstairs, the board was gathering for their routine briefing, the one that always started too early to be useful and always ended too late to be honest. Waiting for them was our general counsel, Maya Rodriguez, a woman who reads contracts like demolition experts read blueprints. 30 minutes after I'd been made history, the courier stepped into the boardroom. Security clearance handles certain deliveries that way. She passed the envelope to Maya. Maya broke the seal, scanned the first line, and slid the document across to Carter's father, the actual CEO. His color already an inch lighter than the paper. He read it twice. His lips moved once. "You just triggered the operational reversion clause," he whispered. Silence eats rooms differently when it knows it's being watched. From my window position, the building didn't move, but I could feel the pressure change, the way a door seals shut 3 floors away. Power isn't who talks the loudest at 0758 hours. Power is who knows which protocol still counts at noon. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I circled a word in my notebook, mission continuity. People think these stories are about revenge. They're not. They're about honoring commitments you made to your commanding officer before someone tried to rename the operation Carter's command notes. The strange thing about tension in an office building is how it spreads. You don't need surveillance equipment or monitoring systems. You can feel when something shifts upstairs. Phones stop ringing. Shoes stop echoing on tile. Even the barista in the cafe kept glancing at our building like it might catch fire. From my corner position by the window, I sipped bitter coffee and pretended to write notes while the truth was already spreading in slow motion 3 floors above. Maya wasn't a woman easily rattled. She once stopped a merger dead in its tracks by asking one question about liability coverage. For her to slide papers to the CEO without commentary meant something structural had cracked. Carter had no idea. He was still pacing the ground floor, checking his phone, probably drafting another Slack announcement about streamlining legacy operations. He stopped at the reception desk, tossed the intern a wink, and adjusted his cufflinks like the whole building was an audience for his promotion ceremony. When I joined Langfield Industries, none of this glass and steel architecture existed. We were 10 people in a rented office above a pizza place. The servers ran hot enough to warm the whole floor, and I used to bring coolers of Gatorade in July just so the junior staff wouldn't melt. Colonel Ben kept receipts for every expense in a shoebox and called me his second set of lungs. "Torres, you breathe structure into chaos," he once told me. I deflected then, uncomfortable with praise, but it stuck. That was before the board grew ambitious, before Ben's health declined, before Carter's polished loafers started clicking their way into conference rooms. I stayed. I stayed because someone has to protect the operational foundation when the paint starts peeling. Inside, I could imagine the scene. The board sitting in their usual formation, half of them barely awake, the other half watching market tickers on their tablets. Then Maya breaking the seal, the weight of her silence filling the room. The CEO reading the first line, blood draining from his face. They wouldn't understand immediately what it meant. Not all of them. Corporate law is written like a tactical manual in a foreign language. But Colonel Ben and I had written the reversion clause so plain, so unavoidable, that even a distracted executive could recognize the teeth in the words. Termination without board approval. Automatic reversion to founder's trust. Successor named in sealed directive. Simple, brutal. Legal? I tapped my pen against the field notebook. This wasn't revenge, not in the Hollywood sense. I hadn't stormed into the boardroom or raised my voice. I hadn't written anonymous reports or leaked scandals to journalists. All I had done was honor a commitment. Colonel Ben's commitment that Langfield Industries would never be consumed by bloodlines instead of backbone. My phone buzzed. A message from Patricia, my former aide. Just 3 words. "What did you do?" I didn't reply. Not yet. Operational security. By late morning, the building was operating differently. Security guards moved faster. Executives whispered in pairs by the elevators. Even from across the street, I could see the change. People avoiding eye contact, moving between rooms like they were carrying invisible emergency equipment. Carter was nowhere visible. My assessment. Upstairs, trying to charm his way past Maya with buzzwords about modernization initiatives. Here's the thing about charm. It evaporates under fluorescent lights when the paperwork is notarized. Around noon, a second courier arrived. This one wasn't mine. Likely from the board's outside counsel, a firm so conservative they made tax preparation look exciting. They didn't come for pleasantries. They came for files. Files meant the clock was already running. I closed my eyes for a moment and thought about Colonel Ben. He hadn't wanted his company to become a dynasty built on inheritance. He'd wanted it to be a machine that could outlast him, a structure stronger than whoever happened to be wearing the uniform at the top. Paper doesn't care about surnames, he used to say. It only cares about signatures. And signatures, I had plenty of those. By mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. The voicemail that followed was Carter's voice, its edges starting to fray. Torres, hey, look, we might have gotten off on the wrong foot here. There's been some legal chatter, paperwork stuff. Maybe we can talk. Just give me a call when you can. I played it twice, not because I needed to hear the words, but because the tone mattered. Gone was the smug certainty of consider yourself history. What replaced it was the sound of a man realizing that history doesn't delete so easily. I didn't call back. Silence is its own response. When the office lights began cutting through the evening sky, I packed up my notebook, left a few coins on the table, and stepped outside. The air felt different, electric, like the hour before a storm breaks. Most revenge stories end with explosions, dramatic reveals, public collapses, but in real operations, it's slower. It's the steady compromising of foundations. It's the quiet shuffle of lawyers in conference rooms. It's the way a man who thought he owned the morning suddenly finds the evening watching him instead. The next morning, the air outside Langfield Industries felt heavier, like the building itself knew it was carrying classified information. I parked across the street again, coffee in hand, and watched the revolving doors spin as employees filtered in. Most of them didn't know yet. They came with earbuds in, coffee cups balanced on folders, key cards ready. Business as usual, except it wasn't. Inside, Carter had his work cut out for him. He might have been the CEO's son, but the board wasn't made up of his fraternity brothers. They were veterans of corporate warfare, some cautious, some ruthless, but all allergic to operational risk. And risk is what the reversion clause spelled out in 12-point Times New Roman. I could imagine the scene. Carter striding into the boardroom, quarter zip at half-mast, hair styled within an inch of its life, acting like he was about to pitch a startup to venture capitalists. He probably thought if he kept talking fast enough, he could outrun the paperwork. But you can't outrun documentation. I didn't need eyes inside to know the timeline was already working against him. Maya would have spent half the night reviewing archives, cross-referencing compliance logs, making calls to the trust administrator. She was thorough. She'd confirmed what I already knew. The clause was valid, reaffirmed in audits, notarized, and ready to execute. By 9 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail, this one shorter. Torres, call me, please. He was starting to understand. It's funny how people assume consequences come with fireworks, but real accountability creeps in quietly. It doesn't arrive like lightning. It spreads like stress fractures in concrete, silent and unstoppable, until the whole structure starts showing strain. At 10:00 hours, I got a text from Patricia. Half the floor is whispering. They know something's wrong. I typed a reply, then deleted it. Better she stayed out of the tactical zone until the board made their move. Loose communications compromise clean operations. Instead, I made notes in my field book. Voicemail 2. Desperation detectable. Internal communications compromised. Structural integrity showing stress. I closed my eyes for a moment and remembered Colonel Ben again. He hated nepotism more than anything else in corporate culture. A company isn't a family, Torres, he'd tell me. It's a trust. You borrow authority from the people who came before you, and you earn the right to pass it on. Bloodlines don't earn authority. Performance does. That's why we'd written the clause. Not as a weapon, but as a circuit breaker to keep the company from being gutted by inherited incompetence. By noon, news had started leaking. A small tech blog posted a headline, Langfield Industries Governance Dispute. Sources cite legacy clause. It was vague, barely 3 paragraphs, but enough to rattle day traders. Stock dipped 3% before lunch. It wasn't free fall, but it was a tremor. I could only imagine Carter's expression when he saw that headline. He loved articles when they praised him, panicked when they suggested he wasn't in control. The kind of leader who'd call public relations in a crisis, demand a press release, and forget that lawyers don't let you spin what's already in motion. Another text came through, this time from an unknown number. He's blaming you. Says you orchestrated this. I almost laughed. Orchestrated? I hadn't orchestrated anything. I just maintained what Colonel Ben and I had established years ago. Around 1500 hours, I got another voicemail. The third one in 24 hours. His voice cracked this time. Torres, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you can't win this. My dad won't let you. The board won't let you. Just call me back, okay? Before this gets worse. Before this gets worse. That line stuck with me. He still thought there was a lever he could pull, a way to make this disappear. He didn't understand that the lever had already been activated. As the sun dropped behind the skyline, the building's lights flickered on. I watched executives shuffle out, their faces tighter than yesterday. No casual conversation, no friendly waves, just people moving faster than usual, as if the air inside had grown thinner. When I got home, I didn't pour a beer or celebrate. I heated leftover takeout, sat at my desk, and opened the file labeled Mission Continuity Package. Inside were scanned copies of every notarized page, Colonel Ben's original notes, and my maintenance logs. I reviewed them like a pilot checking instruments before a long flight. Not out of doubt, but because routine steadies operations. This wasn't about winning. Winning implied ego. This was about structure, about proving that permanence comes from process, not pedigree. Before turning in, I listened to Carter's 3 voicemails one more time. The progression was clear: smug certainty, then forced calm, then cracks in his command voice. I deleted the first, archived the second and third. Tomorrow the storm would break louder, and Carter needed to learn what Colonel Ben always knew. You can dismiss history, but history doesn't dismiss back. By Thursday morning, the building looked the same from street level. Glass catching sunrise, employees scanning badges, delivery trucks lining up at the loading dock. But from across the street I could sense it. The operational rhythm was gone. People walked in with heads down, conversations clipped short. The tension had developed teeth. Carter hadn't called overnight, but the board had met late. I knew their patterns too well. If lights burned past midnight on the executive floor, it wasn't about quarterly projections. It was about damage control. And damage control meant outside counsel. I bought coffee, took my usual observation position, and watched. At 9 a.m. sharp, black sedans rolled up. Not the kind that bring investors, the kind that bring legal specialists. 3 suited figures stepped out, briefcases in hand, moving with the deliberate posture of people paid to confirm bad news. That alone told me everything. The clause wasn't being dismissed. It was alive, working its way through the company's operational foundation like a controlled demolition. Inside, I could imagine the scene. The board table crowded with folders, coffee going cold, faces drawn tight. Maya, calm but sharp, laying out her findings. The clause had been reaffirmed in audits, stamped and signed, unaltered since Colonel Ben himself approved it. No wiggle room. No modernization initiative could erase it. And Carter would have been pacing, voice too loud, trying to laugh it off. I'd seen him do it before when vendor contracts went sideways or compliance deadlines got missed. He'd make jokes, spin buzzwords, talk about disruption like it was defensive armor. But disruption doesn't erase ink. Around 1,000 hours, my phone buzzed with a message from Patricia. It's chaos. People are saying control might revert. They're scared. I typed back, stay calm. Don't get pulled into speculation. Then I deleted it. Best not to leave communication trails. Instead, I wrote in my notebook, whispers confirmed. Fear spreading through ranks. By noon, the market had noticed. A major outlet picked up the story. Langfield faces leadership uncertainty. Legacy clause at center of dispute. The headline was everywhere within hours. Stock slid 6%. That's when panic stops being internal. That's when investors start calling, asking why a billion-dollar company is being tripped up by something written in 2009. I could almost hear Carter's voice rising in that boardroom. It's ceremonial, symbolic. We sunset those documents years ago. And Maya's cold reply, steady as a scalpel, no, Carter. We sunset templates, not governing documents. At 1500 hours, another voicemail hit my phone. His voice was brittle now. Torres, look, we can fix this. Just talk to me. My dad's furious. The board's turning on me, but if you just withdraw whatever you filed, maybe we can work something out. Please, please. It struck me how quickly authority changes flavor. Just days ago, he'd smirked across a conference table and called me history. Now he was pleading into a voicemail like a man clinging to a cliff edge. But this was never about clinging. It was about mission continuity, about honoring Colonel Ben's belief that permanence comes from structure, not surnames. As evening fell, the building lights flickered on again. From street level, I saw groups leaving earlier than usual, faces pale, conversations hushed. Someone was crying by the revolving doors. An assistant clutching a half-empty box. That told me Carter was making desperate moves, terminating people, trying to reassert control. But desperation only accelerates structural failure. At home, I opened my mission continuity package again, checked every page, every signature, every timestamp. The documents were airtight. Colonel Ben had trusted me to safeguard them, and I had. The process was doing the work now. All I had to do was maintain operational discipline. Before bed, I listened to Carter's latest voicemail. I didn't delete it. I saved it in the same folder as the others. I wanted the record. Not for revenge, but for documentation. Proof that arrogance always bends when faced with proper procedure. Friday morning arrived like the final day of a long deployment. The street looked ordinary. Garbage truck groaning past, cyclist arguing with a taxi driver, the cafe doorbell sticking on its second ring. Ordinary is good camouflage for turning points. It keeps civilians from noticing until the operation has already executed. I took the same observation position by the window. The field notebook came out of my bag more from habit than necessity. The work had been done days, years ago. Signatures layered over signatures, documentation nested like defensive positions. I wasn't nervous. I was attentive. It felt like waiting for equipment to finish its cycle. You don't rush the process. You trust the specifications. Across the street, security escorted a courier through the revolving doors. Different messenger bag, same professional posture. Protocol never performs for an audience. It just proceeds. I knew where she was going. Top floor, long corridor, the boardroom with the 2 malfunctioning vents, and the view executives pretend not to stare at during difficult briefings. She would hand the envelope to Maya. Maya would open it with the same letter opener she used for everything. Then the room would get very, very quiet. I didn't rush inside. I gave it time to process. 15 minutes later, my phone lit up. Unknown number, short text. Please come upstairs. No punctuation. That was intelligence. Lawyers use periods even when they're panicking. The lobby reflected my face back at me. Older than when I first walked in 16 years ago, steadier, less inclined to explain myself. The elevator ride felt like moving through compressed atmosphere. On the executive floor, the receptionist stood as if her chair had lost structural integrity. She didn't ask for my badge. She just nodded toward the corridor. The boardroom door was open. Not wide, just enough. Maya met me in the threshold, eyes level, voice steady. Thank you for coming. Inside, the table was lined with folders, pens aligned like small tactical decisions. The board sat in weary formation. Carter's father kept his hands flat on the wood as if bracing for rough seas. Carter stood near the blinds, trying to choose between anger and charm, finding neither worked. He looked smaller without an audience. Maya spoke first. The reversion clause has been executed and validated. The trust directive is clear. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. She turned a page, slid a document toward the head of the table, then toward me. Operational oversight is transferred. Effective immediately. No applause, no gasps. Serious rooms don't do theatrics when paperwork has the floor. The board chair cleared her throat. Mr. Torres, do you accept? I thought of Colonel Ben at that folding table, of the shoebox of receipts, of the first fireproof safe, of the junior staff drinking Gatorade by overheated servers, of the day he handed me a pen and said Archive X3. I thought of how the company had learned to say innovation through clenched teeth, and how operational foundations don't care about slogans. Yes, I said, I accept. Some decisions sound louder in memory than in real time. This one landed like a stamp. Final, not because I said so, but because the process had already done the talking. Carter moved then. This is ridiculous, he snapped. He's operations. He files things. You can't just hand him. He stopped when 2 security officers stepped into the doorway behind me. They didn't touch him. Good security knows contact turns moments into incidents. The chair kept her voice level. Mr. Langfield, you'll receive your separation agreement. We'll schedule time for you to collect personal items. He looked at me the way people look at stalled elevators. You did this? No, I said. Colonel Ben did. I just kept the documentation. He laughed once, harsh and empty, then pushed past the officers, shoulders high. The door clicked when it closed. Quiet can be merciful. It can also be exact. We turned to business. Maya walked me through the chain of command notifications, a checklist of departments that needed immediate reassurance. Payroll first. Fear breeds fastest there. Then compliance. They already knew the story, but needed official confirmation. Customer accounts next. Money calms. Finally, the all-hands message. I had a draft ready. It wasn't grand. It said what mattered. At the head of the table, I plugged in a flash drive. The dashboard flickered to a company-wide banner. Steady hands, clear mission. We honor our founders' protocols and our people's work. Mission continuity over noise. Systems over slogans. If you keep operations running, you are seen. If you build, repair, or serve, you are the future. No signature line, no victory lap. The message was the signature. The chair nodded. "We'll document this," she said to the secretary. "To me, you'll need an interim team. I'll pull from the operational foundation," I said. "People who know where the critical systems are." On my way out, I paused by the framed photo wall. Colonel Ben, young and determined. The first server rack with a desk fan aimed at it like a prayer. The night of Series B funding when we ordered pizza and someone forgot plates and nobody cared. None of the pictures were staged. That's why they still worked. Downstairs, I asked security to hold the elevators for a minute. Then I sent 3 emails. To payroll, your work supports families. Nothing changes about your schedules or approvals today. If someone pressures you to rush processes, route it to me. To compliance, thank you for keeping documentation. Meet at 1400 hours. Bring questions and the audit log. We'll close operational gaps. To the whole company, we owe you clarity and time. You'll get both. Bring your project lists. We'll solve practical problems first, because practical problems make tomorrow possible. Outside, the air felt lighter. Not triumphant, just aligned. I walked to the cafe. The barista looked up like I'd stepped out of a news report. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "It will be," I said. "We're going to fix the unglamorous things." Back in my truck, I opened the folder on my phone labeled Documentation. I listened to the first voicemail. "Consider yourself history." Then the last, "Please." I deleted them both. Not out of mercy, out of maintenance. You clear what doesn't serve the mission. People love revenge stories because they feel like heat. But the real lesson is colder, more professional. Build processes that outlast pride. Keep the documentation. Protect the people who do the actual work. You can fire someone at 0758 hours and post a victory message at 0900, but noon still belongs to the operations staff and the people who respect proper procedure. Carter thought he could change command structure at 0800 and control the battlefield by noon. But noon still belongs to the NCOs, the ones who know where the real authority is filed.